Tonight we'll drift into a soft winding journey through the sands of time, all the way to the sun-warmed stones of ancient Egypt. Before we begin, dim your lights, settle under your blanket, and let the quiet of the evening wrap around you. Maybe you hear the faint hum of your heater, the sigh of a breeze outside your window, or the soft creak of your chair as you lean back. If this calm journey helps you unwind, you can gently tap like and subscribe, only if it feels right, like placing a single candle in a quiet window. Let me tell you about a warm Egyptian evening. The year is somewhere around 1500 BCE, though time here feels more like a slow river than a ticking clock. The air carries the scent of baked barley bread and honey, drifting from the open ovens of a small home tucked between sandstone walls. You can almost hear the faint crackle of embers as women in linen dresses chatter softly, their bracelets clinking like tiny bells. Tonight we're not rushing. No, this is the kind of story you let melt on your tongue. Imagine stepping barefoot onto the cool tiles of an ancient courtyard. The clay beneath your feet still holds the warmth of the day, but it's giving it back to the night air, like a long exhale. Somewhere nearby, a cat, sleek with fur as black as the shadow of the moon, slips between your ankles, tail curling in greeting. I'm here to tell you about something the Egyptians enjoyed that, well, might surprise you, because for all their grand pyramids, solemn temples, and meticulous hieroglyphs, they also had their, shall we say, festive side. In fact, certain temple festivals were so overflowing with music, dancing, and intoxicating delights that some scribes hinted the gods themselves might have blushed. And yes, there were substances. Picture a clay jar sealed with a lump of beeswax. When the lid is broken, the smell hits you. Earthy, sharp, and somehow sweet. Inside, fermented lotus flowers steeped in wine with a golden swirl of honey at the bottom. This wasn't just a drink. This was a ticket to another state of mind, believed to bring you closer to Hathor, goddess of joy and ecstasy. The walls of some tombs show banquet scenes, guests reclining on cushions, eyes half closed, musicians plucking the strings of harps that shimmer in the torchlight, and in their hands, cups brimming with drinks so potent that modern chemists, studying residue, found traces of what might have been, well, let's call it an herbal enhancement. Imagine your royal banquet having a little extra kick, enough to make the stars above feel just a little closer. But don't picture wild chaos, no. This was a slow, dreamy kind of revelry. A scribe might lean back, fanning himself lazily, watching the smoke from a little incense burner curl upward like a ribbon into the night. A dancer's anklets would jingle softly as she moved, her dress swaying like papyrus reeds in the Nile breeze. The whole scene would feel like it was underwater, the air thick with the scents of myrrh, cinnamon, and lotus. And here's a small but curious detail. Sometimes, sweet treats were part of this dreamy indulgence. Honey-dipped dates stuffed with almonds and just a pinch of coriander seed. They were soft, sticky, and so sweet they made your teeth ache. But in the best way. The way a childhood candy might. It was their closest thing to a dessert truffle. The kind of thing you pop in your mouth and forget the rest of the conversation for a moment. Do you hear the river, just beyond the walls? The Nile moves with a sound that's neither loud nor soft. It's simply there, like the beat of your own heart when you're lying very still. Boats sway at their moorings, their ropes creaking softly. The moonlight pools across the water, and you could almost believe the gods are leaning down to watch. Now you might be wondering, did everyone in Egypt indulge like this? No, of course not. The everyday life of most Egyptians was filled with work, tending fields, grinding grain, making bricks. But during festivals, life opened up like a lotus flower at dawn. Even the simplest farmer might find himself sipping a little spiced beer, eating fresh bread with caraway, and feeling the heaviness of the year slip away. There's something comforting about that, isn't there? That even thousands of years ago, people needed a little break, a little sweetness, a little buzz, to remind them life was more than toil. We're not so different from them, really. Maybe your version is a cup of tea in the quiet of the night, or a favourite snack after a long day, is the same heartbeat. As the night in our Egyptian courtyard deepens, the laughter gets softer, like waves rolling farther out to sea. A few guests are stretched out on mats, eyes closed, fingers still curled around empty cups. The cat you saw earlier has claimed a cushion near the fire, paws tucked under, purring in that low, hypnotic way cats have. The musicians have slowed to a gentle hum of strings, barely louder than the whisper of wind. I watch as a servant, probably no older than 16, brings out one last platter. On it, fresh pomegranates split open so their ruby seeds gleam like tiny jewels in the firelight. Guests pluck them slowly, letting the sweet tart burst linger on their tongues. Outside, the moon slips behind a cloud, and the courtyard feels like it's wrapped in velvet. And as we leave that warm little gathering behind, we walk slowly through the narrow streets. The air smells faintly of baked bread, wood smoke, and the river. Somewhere, a dog barks once and then falls silent. You can feel the sand shifting gently under your sandals, the way soft sheets shift under your toes when you're just finding the perfect sleeping position. Now, let your mind wander too. Picture the Nile at dawn. The sun hasn't quite risen, but the horizon glows like it's holding its breath. Soft peach and pale gold spilling gently into the river's mirror surface. There's a cool mist hovering above the water, and if you close your eyes you can almost feel it on your cheeks. Damp, like the inside of a clay jar just rinsed. This morning we're drifting into a small riverside market. The soundscape is gentle, the soft flap of linen awnings in the breeze, the creak of boat ropes, and somewhere nearby, the muffled thump of a millstone grinding grain. I pass by a woman selling baskets, tightly woven, smelling faintly of reeds and river mud. She smiles, though she's busy, her hand still working as she talks to a fisherman holding a string of fresh tilapia. But our eyes are on something else, something sweet, unusual, and perfect for slow mornings like this. A tray of fig cakes. They're not much to look at, just small, flattened discs of mashed figs, chopped nuts, and a drizzle of date syrup. But take one in your hand and it's warm from the morning sun. Bite into it, and the outside is slightly sticky, the inside soft and almost buttery, even though there's no butter at all. Just the natural richness of figs. It's like eating a bite of late summer, even if the air still holds a chill. I learned once from an inscription that these fig cakes were sometimes tucked into baskets as offerings to the gods. Imagine your breakfast also being worthy of divine approval. Perhaps that's why the vendor, an older man with a beard as white as ibis feathers, lays each one on a piece of smooth papyrus before handing it over, as if it's a little sacred gift. Now, if you're wondering why figs, well, they were one of Egypt's earliest cultivated fruits. They grew in the warm, fertile soil along the Nile, ripening into deep purple globes that were as sweet as any candy. And they kept well when dried, perfect for long journeys or for those rare moments when life slowed down enough to savour something just because. As we walk through the market, the sun finally crests the horizon. Light spills over baskets of coriander, heaps of onions, and jars of honey sealed with wax. A boy is selling lotus stems. Yes, the same flowers you might picture floating in temple pools. He plucks one, peels back the green skin to reveal crisp, pale flesh. It tastes, I'm told, a bit like celery, but with a hint of sweetness. We find ourselves beside a bread stall. The smell is the kind that makes your shoulders relax without you even noticing. Barley bread, fresh from dome-shaped mud ovens stacked in soft, uneven piles. Some are plain, but some have little pockets filled with chopped dates and honey, a humble cousin to a modern pastry, maybe the closest thing the ancient Egyptians had to a hot pocket, though with far more patience in the baking. A woman buying one leans in and tells me, almost in a whisper, that on feast days they add spices, cinnamon, cardamom, imported through long caravan routes. Imagine waiting all year for a flavour, and when you finally taste it, the way your whole mouth wakes up would feel almost ceremonial. We wander toward the riverbank now, fig cake in hand. The breeze carries the smell of wet reeds and the faint salt of fish drying on racks. Somewhere nearby, a fisherman's wife is humming, soft and tuneless, but warm, like she's humming to the river itself. I sit on the edge of the bank, feet dangling above the water. The current is slow, steady, pulling morning reflections toward the sea. I take another bite of the fig cake, and it's not just food, it's history. It's a taste that someone 3,000 years ago also knew, sitting perhaps in the same position, hearing the same lapping water. Have you ever thought about that? That there are flavors so old they outlast empires? That somewhere, some distant ancestor might have had the exact same sensation of sweetness spreading across their tongue, the same quiet pleasure of chewing slowly, letting it dissolve into the day. The market begins to wake fully now. Voices louder, baskets swinging from arms, goats bleating as they're led through the narrow lanes. The gentle spell of early morning is fading, but that's all right. We tuck the memory of it away like a pressed flower between the pages of a book. We stand, brushing the fine dust from our clothes. The fig cake is gone, but its sweetness lingers, the way soft music lingers after it's stopped. Somewhere in the crowd, someone is calling out the price of fresh melons. Another person laughs so hard they have to lean against a wall. And so, with the taste of fig still in our mind, we turn away from the riverbank and let our feet carry us deeper into the day. Now, let your mind wander too. The day is warmer now, the sunlight spilling across the Nile like molten gold. The river traffic has thickened, long, slim boats gliding past, their sails billowing like linen clouds. But we're not here for the noise of trade or the clamour of the markets. We're headed inland toward a shaded courtyard where the scent of roasting grain is curling lazily into the air. The courtyard belongs to a brewer. Now, Egyptian beer wasn't the frothy amber drink you might be picturing. It was thick, almost porridge-like, and cloudy enough that you couldn't see the bottom of your cup. Made from bread and barley, it was more of a meal than a drink, comforting, hearty, and essential to everyday life. But today the brewer is making something special, festival beer. Instead of ordinary water, it's steeped with herbs, maybe a pinch of chamomile for calm, maybe a few crushed dates for sweetness, maybe something else. Something that brings a softness to your thoughts, like the way warm sand makes your footsteps heavy. I watch as he ladles the drink into wide clay cups, the liquid steaming gently in the morning air. It smells faintly of honey and earth, with just a ghost of something floral. When I take a sip, it's both sweet and sour, almost chewy in texture, and it lingers on the tongue like a soft hum. A woman sitting nearby leans in and tells me, half laughing, that some brewers keep family secrets in their spice blends, things passed from parent to child for generations. Perhaps a sprig of wild mint, perhaps a bit of dried lotus petal ground so fine it disappears into the liquid. Little mysteries you can only taste if you close your eyes and pay attention. In one corner, a group of men are playing a game called Senate, a grid of squares marked on a board, their fingers moving carved tokens with lazy concentration. Every now and then, one of them laughs, and the sound is low, warm, like it's been brewed alongside the beer. It's easy to lose time here. The shadow shifts slowly along the sandstone walls, and the air carries the faint chirp of distant birds. A cat, this one pale as desert cream, has found a patch of sunlight and is stretched so far you wonder if she might melt entirely. I take another sip, and the warmth begins to reach my shoulders, loosening muscles I didn't even realize were tense. It's not the kind of intoxication that rattles you. It's the kind that feels like slipping into a deeper layer of yourself, as though your bones are finally at rest. I think about how, in 2500 BCE, beer was not only a drink but also a form of payment for workers. Imagine earning your day's wages and knowing they come in the form of comfort, liquid bread that nourishes the body and, on certain days like this, the spirit. Someone passes around a tray of little savoury cakes, barley mixed with onion, garlic and a hint of cumin, baked until the edges are crisp and golden. They're small enough to eat in 2 bites, but each one is like a burst of the harvest itself. Grains and spices and the warmth of the ovens. It's the perfect pairing for the beer, the salt and spice nudging the sweetness forward. Nearby, the brewer's daughter is threading garlands of dried flowers and papyrus strands. She's humming a tune so soft it's more vibration than sound, something that might have been sung 1,000 years before her and might be sung 1,000 years after. Every so often a breeze lifts the garlands, and they sway like the sails on the boats outside. I find myself thinking of how different this courtyard must look at night, during the height of a festival. The cups refilled before they're empty, the laughter growing louder, the Senate board abandoned in favour of dancing, the shadows of firelight moving across the walls like stories being told without words. But for now, the world is quiet. I finish the last of my beer, setting the empty cup down on the worn wood table. The brewer gives me a nod, wordless, approving. Somehow, it feels like I've been trusted with a little piece of something ancient and human. As I step back into the sunlight, the air feels different. Softer maybe, or maybe it's just me. The path ahead is lined with low stone walls, warm to the touch. Somewhere in the distance I hear the slow, steady beat of a drum, a call to something, though I don't know what. And we follow it, letting the rhythm guide us toward whatever comes next. Now, let your mind wander too. The drumbeat leads us into the late afternoon. The light has shifted. No longer the bright gold of midday, but something warmer, deeper, as though the sun is seasoning the world before night comes. We find ourselves in a small village square, where the air smells of roasting meat, fresh bread, and the faint sweetness of dates carried from a nearby stall. At the centre, a clay oven glows like a captured sunset. A man with arms as strong as the Nile's current is turning skewers of meat, small chunks of goose brushed with a glaze of honey, coriander, and garlic. The fat sizzles as it drips, sending up a fragrance so rich you can almost taste it before the first bite. I lean closer, and the warmth from the oven strokes my cheeks like the first sip of hot tea on a cold night. The man grins and slices a piece from the skewer, placing it onto a round of fresh flatbread. The bread is warm, pliable, with the faint smokiness of the oven still clinging to it. I bite, and the glaze is sticky at first, then gives way to the tender, savoury goose beneath. It's both hearty and delicate, the way certain winter stews can be, filling but with flavours that float around the edges. Goose, I learn, was a prized food in ancient Egypt, especially during feast days. It was raised along the riverbanks, fed on grain, and prepared for special guests. The sweetness of honey in the glaze isn't just about taste, it's about showing abundance, a sign that the host has enough to share something rare. Around us, the square is alive with quiet tasks. A woman weaving mats from palm fronds, a boy chasing a stray chicken, a scribe scratching at a wax tablet with a stylus, pausing every so often to squint at the sun. Every sound is softened by distance and warmth, as though the heat has wrapped them all in a slow rhythm. A jug of pomegranate juice is passed around, is cool and tart with a faint dryness that makes you take another sip immediately. The seeds inside burst like tiny fireworks against the tongue, and the deep red stain on the clay cup looks like it's been there for centuries. From a side alley, a faint sweet smell drifts in, something baked, something rich. Curiosity wins, and we wander toward it. At a low table, two women are shaping dough into little half-moon pastries. They pinch the edges together with a rhythm that matches the drum beat we followed earlier. Inside, the filling is a mix of dates and crushed sesame seeds, bound with a splash of fig syrup. They tell me with a smile that these are for the evening meal, but they slip one to me anyway, to taste the sunset. I bite into it, and the outside is flaky, almost delicate, but the filling is dense and warm. The sesame adds a nutty richness that balances the syrup's sweetness, and for a moment I forget I'm standing in a village square at all. It feels more like sitting beside a fireplace, even though the closest fire is the clay oven in the distance. A little girl tugs at my sleeve and offers me a sprig of fresh mint, her palm still damp from the leaves' morning watering. The smell is sharp, clean, and somehow makes every flavour I've had today brighter. I tuck it behind my ear and she laughs, running off toward a group of children playing a clapping game. The sun dips lower, shadows stretch like long fingers across the ground, and the air begins to cool in that way that makes you instinctively want to draw your shawl closer. The drumbeat fades, replaced by the gentle crackle of the oven fire and the occasional murmur of conversation. I take one last sip of pomegranate juice, feeling the day settle into my bones like warm sand. There's no rush here, only the slow unfolding of evening, the promise of shared meals and quiet stories under the stars. As we leave the square, the smell of roasted goose lingers in the air, trailing after us like the memory of a kind word. The path ahead glows faintly in the last light, and somewhere in the distance the first evening star appears. Now, let your mind wander too. Night in ancient Egypt doesn't fall all at once. It's more like watching blue ink spill slowly across parchment, deepening with every breath. The last traces of sunlight cling stubbornly to the horizon, a thin band of copper and rose, while above, the first stars poke through like careful stitches in the sky. We're walking along a narrow lane now, the walls on either side tall and warm from the day's heat. From one doorway, a curl of incense escapes, something woody, almost spicy. The smell seems to hang in the air, and the faint smoke threads upward like it's looking for the moon. At the lane's end, we step into a small courtyard where a family has gathered for their evening meal. They greet us not with surprise, but with the same easy warmth you might give a neighbour who's wandered in at the right moment. The table, low to the ground, carved from wood worn smooth by years of use, is set with earthenware bowls and simple reed mats. The centrepiece of tonight's meal is something both humble and celebratory, a stew made with lentils, onions and garlic, slow cooked until the flavours have merged into a single, deep note. The pot is still warm from the coals, and when it's ladled into bowls, steam swirls up into the cooling night. The first spoonful is hearty and grounding, like being wrapped in a blanket you've had since childhood. Beside the stew there's bread, flat, round and soft, with faint scorch marks from the oven stones. It's meant for dipping, for scooping up the lentils so that each bite carries both the chewy comfort of bread and the earthy richness of the stew. I tear off a piece, and the smell alone is enough to make me close my eyes for a moment before tasting. For something brighter, there's a plate of pickled vegetables, radishes, cucumbers, and even a few slices of turnip, all soaked in a mixture of vinegar, herbs, and salt. They cut through the heaviness of the stew, sharp and tangy, like a cool breeze through a warm room. While we eat, the family shares a small dish of preserved fish, salted and dried earlier in the season, then softened in oil. It's salty, yes, but also smoky, as if it's been touched by every campfire between here and the sea. One of the children laughs when I take too big a bite and need an extra gulp of beer to wash it down. And speaking of beer, tonight's is lighter than the festival brew we had earlier, but it still carries that comforting, grainy sweetness. It's served in wide cups without handles, the kind you cradle with both hands. The clay holds a bit of the night's chill, and it's oddly satisfying to feel the cool against your palms while the drink warms you from the inside. Above us, the stars are beginning to take shape into familiar patterns. Orion's belt, the curve of the Big Dipper. In Egypt, the night sky was as much a calendar as a canvas, telling farmers when to plant, sailors when to travel, and priests when the gods might be watching more closely. The youngest child at the table asks if I want something sweet before we go, and before I can answer, she's run inside. She returns with a small bowl of honey and a plate of fresh cheese. The cheese is soft, mild, and a little crumbly, made from goat's milk that still carries the faint scent of pasture. I spread it on bread, then drizzle the honey over the top. It's a combination so simple it feels almost accidental, yet the way the sweetness wraps around the cheese makes it taste like something meant for royalty. When the meal is finished, the family doesn't rush to clear the table. They sit back, leaning against the walls, talking in low voices. Someone starts humming, the same melody we heard earlier in the village square. It's the kind of tune that doesn't belong to anyone, it just exists, passed from voice to voice until it's woven into the fabric of the night itself. The air is cooled enough now that I pull my shawl closer. From somewhere beyond the courtyard, the sound of the river reaches us, a steady, soft rush that's as soothing as breathing. When we finally rise to leave, the mother presses a small piece of cheese into my hand, for later, as if the taste of tonight should follow me into whatever comes next. I tuck it away carefully, knowing it will be a small anchor to this moment when the road ahead feels long. We step back into the lane, the warmth of the household still clinging to us like the last light of the day. The moon is high now, the stars sharper, and the quiet between them feels like something you could fall into. Now, let your mind wander too. The moonlight tonight is so bright it paints the ground silver. The walls of mud brick houses seem to glow faintly, and the shadows stretch long and cool across the path. Somewhere nearby, a donkey shifts in its sleep, hooves scuffing softly against the earth. We're heading toward the edge of the village, where the houses thin out and the scent of the river grows stronger. But before we reach the water, there's a small cluster of people gathered around a low fire. The flames flicker against their faces, turning their expressions into living hieroglyphs. Lines of laughter, the tilt of a brow, the curve of a smile. They're roasting something in the embers. At first, it's hard to tell what, just small parcels wrapped in leaves, edges charred, the smell rich and earthy. One of them beckons us closer, pulling a packet from the coals and unwrapping it carefully. Inside is a mess of tender fava beans mashed with garlic, coriander, and a drizzle of oil, all steamed together in their leafy bundle. This, they tell me, is best eaten hot, straight from the fire. The beans are creamy, almost buttery, but with a bright edge from the herbs. It's the kind of food you eat slowly, not because you have to, but because each bite asks you to linger. Beside the fire sits a clay jar, its lid crusted with salt. Inside, pickled lemons, their skins soft and translucent from months of soaking. One of the women slices one thinly and passes me a piece to taste. The sharpness jolts me awake for a moment, like a cool splash of river water in the face, before melting into a mellow, sunny bitterness. She laughs at my expression and hands me another bean parcel, as if to restore balance. A small basket appears from the shadows, inside flatbread sprinkled with black cumin seeds. The seeds crackle faintly when bitten, releasing a warm, peppery scent. I use the bread to scoop up the beans, catching the oil and bits of coriander clinging to the edges. As we eat, the fire's smoke drifts upward, carrying with it the faint scent of acacia wood. Above us, the Milky Way sprawls across the sky like a trail of spilled flour on a dark countertop. It's easy to imagine the ancient priests looking up at the same sight and seeing the celestial Nile, a river in the heavens to mirror the one at our feet. Someone passes around a small jug of date wine. It's darker than the lotus wine from before, with a richer, almost molasses-like sweetness. The warmth it brings is slow, blooming in the chest like an ember catching light. A boy at the fire is carving something from a piece of soft wood, small, careful cuts that reveal the curve of a bird taking shape. When he notices me watching, he shrugs and says it's just to pass the time while the beans cook, but there's pride in the way he turns it over in his hands. By the time the last parcels are eaten, the fire has collapsed into glowing embers. The warmth is gentler now, more a memory against the skin than a heat in the air. We sit in the glow a little longer, no one in a hurry to leave. Eventually one of the older men stands, brushing the dust from his clothes. He offers to walk us toward the river, his pace unhurried. The path is lined with reeds whispering in the night breeze, their voices soft and constant. When we reach the water, the moon's reflection is so clear it's hard to tell where the sky ends and the river begins. Somewhere downstream, a fisherman's torch bobs like a drifting star. The man nods once, a silent farewell, before turning back toward the village. I watch him go, the sound of his footsteps fading until it's just the river and the wind again. Now, let your mind wander to... The river at night has a sound that's different from the day. In the sunlight, it's full of activity. The slap of oars, the voices of fishermen, the creak of boats. But now, under the moon, it's just a low, continuous murmur, like someone telling a story too soft to make out the words. We follow the shoreline for a while, our sandals brushing through the fine sand. It feels cool now, almost silky underfoot, as if the day's heat has been tucked away for safekeeping. The scent of the water mixes with a faint sweetness carried on the breeze, and before long we see the source, a small boat tied up to a wooden post, its deck piled with baskets. The fisherman aboard waves us over. He's been out since before sunset, and his catch of the night isn't just fish, it's freshwater chestnuts. He keeps them damp under layers of lotus leaves, and when he peels one, the white flesh inside gleams in the moonlight. It's crisp, with a clean, mild flavour like biting into the first apple of autumn, only gentler. From another basket he produces a tangle of river greens, plants that grow in the shallows, their stems tender and their leaves shaped like little paddles. He explains they'll be boiled with garlic and oil, a simple dish that tastes of the river itself. We sit on the dock while he works. A small clay stove on the boat holds a shallow pan, and he adds a splash of oil, the scent of which flares into the night air. The greens sizzle as they hit the surface, softening almost instantly. Pinch of salt, a twist of garlic paste, and they're done, bright green and glistening. I take a bite. It's tender, but with a slight snap to the stems, and the flavour is both fresh and faintly briny. The garlic hums gently in the background, warm without being sharp. It's the taste of a shoreline in spring, even here in the cool of night. While we eat, the fisherman talks about the moon, how certain fish are easier to catch when it's full, how the river seems calmer when it's new. He speaks slowly, his voice blending with the lapping water, until it feels like the whole scene is swaying in time with his words. For dessert, he offers something unexpected, a small jar of candied lotus root. The slices are translucent, each one a perfect circle with delicate holes like a snowflake pattern. They're chewy at first, then give way to a soft sweetness that's not unlike honey but with a faint floral note. As I chew, I imagine priests leaving these as offerings in temple shrines, a way of giving the gods something beautiful as well as delicious. A breeze stirs, lifting the reeds and sending ripples across the water. Somewhere far off, a nightbird calls, a single low note that echoes for a moment before fading. The fisherman finishes packing his baskets, covering them with fresh leaves to keep the damp in. When it's time to leave, he hands me a handful of chestnuts for the road, as if the road isn't just a winding path back to the village, but something longer, something worth preparing for. I thank him, and he smiles, already turning back to his boat, where the small stove glows faintly against the dark. We walk on, the sound of the river following us like a companion. The moon is higher now, and the air feels lighter, as though the night is opening up just a little more for us to wander through. Now, let your mind wander too. By the time we reach the next bend in the river, the moonlight is spilling across the fields. Papyrus reeds sway gently, their shadows stretching long and thin over the damp earth. The air here smells faintly of tilled soil and green stems, a scent that's both fresh and ancient, as if it's been the same for 1,000 seasons. Ahead there's a small farmstead. A single oil lamp flickers in the doorway, casting a warm golden square onto the ground. Inside, a family is gathered around a low table, and the sound of soft laughter drifts out into the cool night. They wave us in without hesitation, as though the Nile itself has carried us here. Tonight's meal is modest but full of care. At the centre is a dish of roasted quail, small birds, browned until their skin glistens, then dusted with cumin and crushed coriander seeds. The smell alone makes my stomach tighten in anticipation, and when the first bite comes, the meat is tender, pulling away from the bone with almost no effort. It's richer than chicken, with a warmth that fills the mouth slowly, like a secret being told. Beside the quail is a bowl of lentil porridge. It's thicker than the stew we tasted earlier in the week, cooked until it holds its shape on the spoon. The lentils are softened with a bit of milk, making them almost creamy, and the top is sprinkled with finely chopped fresh dill. The herb brightens the earthiness of the lentils, lifting the flavour without overpowering it. On the edge of the table there's a plate of fresh cucumber slices. They're pale green, with the faintest shimmer of moisture on their surfaces, and they crunch cleanly between the teeth. A dash of salt and a squeeze of sour pomegranate juice turns them into a refreshing counterpoint to the heavier dishes. The eldest son brings out a small basket of bread rolls. These aren't the flatbreads we've grown used to. They're small, round, and dusted lightly with sesame seeds. The crust is just firm enough to give a little resistance before giving way to the soft, warm crumb inside. Tear one open, and the steam carries the scent of roasted grain straight to your nose. And then there's something unexpected. A bowl of honeyed barley pearls. They glisten like tiny golden beads, cooked until just tender and then tossed with honey and a pinch of cinnamon. The first spoonful is both familiar and surprising. Part porridge, part dessert, sweet but still grounded in the earthy grain. As the meal unfolds, the conversation drifts from planting cycles to the behaviour of the river this season. They talk about the water's rise, how it's been gentle this year, and how the soil near the banks is richer than they've seen in a decade. It's the kind of talk that's both practical and reverent, an acknowledgement of how closely life here is tied to the Nile's moods. When the plates are nearly empty, The mother brings out a clay jug filled with warm goat's milk, lightly spiced with cinnamon and sweetened with date syrup. The milk is soothing, the kind of drink that makes your shoulders drop and your eyelids feel heavier. It's easy to imagine a child falling asleep halfway through a cup of this, head nodding against the table. After the last sip, the family doesn't rush us out. Instead, we sit in the gentle quiet, the oil lamp flickering, the night breeze slipping in through the open doorway. Somewhere outside, a frog croaks, and then another answers from farther down the bank. When it's time to go, they send us off with 2 small rolls wrapped in cloth. For the journey, they say, though our journey tonight is only as long as the path to wherever the moon leads us next. The lamp's light follows us out for a few steps before the darkness swallows it, and we're left again with the silvered world of the night. Now, let your mind wander too. The road curves away from the fields, and soon the sound of the river is replaced by the quiet hum of the desert at night. It's not silence exactly. There's the soft rasp of sand shifting under your steps, the faint whisper of wind slipping past the edges of your shawl, and every so often, the distant cry of a night bird calling to no one in particular. Ahead, a small cluster of palm trees sways against the starlit sky. Beneath them, a few low tents are pitched in a loose circle around a central fire. The air is warm here, but the warmth comes from the fire, not the day, its glow dancing over the sand like spilled gold. We're welcomed with the same ease as before, though this gathering feels different, quieter, more intimate. The smell here is unexpected. Not the bread and roasting meats of the villages, but something sweet, spiced, and almost perfumed. It's coming from a pot set low over the fire. Inside, wheat berries simmer in goat's milk, thickening slowly as they absorb the sweetness of date syrup. Cinnamon sticks and shards of dried orange peel float on the surface, sending up ribbons of scent that catch in the night air. The cook, an older woman with silver threaded through her hair, stirs slowly, as though hurrying might break the magic. When the pudding is ready, it's ladled into shallow bowls and topped with a scattering of crushed pistachios. The first spoonful is both creamy and chewy, the wheat giving a pleasant bite amid the softness. The cinnamon warms the tongue, and the orange peel adds a bright, unexpected spark at the edge of the sweetness. Beside the pudding, there's a plate of dried figs, each one stuffed with almonds and rolled in sesame seeds. The figs are chewy and rich, the almonds adding just enough crunch to keep the sweetness from becoming too heavy. It's the kind of dessert that makes you take small bites, letting the flavors settle before going back for more. We sit cross-legged around the fire, the bowls resting in our laps. The flames crackle softly, throwing shadows that sway against the palms. Someone hums a low tune, more rhythm than melody, and it blends with the sound of the wind moving through the fronds overhead. One of the men passes around a clay jug of hibiscus tea, deep red, cool and sharply tangy. It cuts cleanly through the richness of the pudding, refreshing the mouth and leaving behind a faint floral note. The tea's colour in the firelight looks almost like liquid garnet. As the meal fades into conversation, the stories begin. Small ones, about finding lost goats, about the strange patterns of the stars this season, about the way sand can swallow a trail overnight. The fire pops softly now and then, sending a faint drift of sparks upward before they disappear into the dark. When the bowls are empty, the older woman rinses them in a basin, the water catching the fire's glow. The rest of us lean back, the sand warm against our palms, the palms' shadows swaying like they're trying to keep time with the wind. Someone points upward at the brightest star in the sky, tracing invisible lines to connect it to others. It's not the same constellation, I know, but it doesn't matter, the story it carries is enough. By the time we rise to leave, the fire has burned low, its light soft and steady like the heartbeat of the desert itself. The pudding's warmth lingers in my stomach, and the scent of cinnamon still clings faintly to my fingers. We step back onto the path, the tents shrinking behind us, their shapes blending into the shadows of the palms. Ahead, the horizon glows faintly where the moonlight meets the desert sand. Now, let your mind wander too. The desert path eventually leads us back toward the faint shimmer of the Nile. The sound of the water is still far away, but the air has changed. Cooler now, tinged with that subtle dampness that means the river isn't far. Somewhere nearby, a hyena laughs in the dark, its strange call rising and falling before fading into the wind. Ahead, a cluster of lanterns glows low to the ground. They mark the entrance to a riverside gathering, a kind of night market, though smaller and calmer than the bustling daytime stalls. Here, most of the business is food for travellers, cooked fresh and eaten on the spot under the watch of the moon. The first scent that reaches us is smoke, rich, aromatic smoke curling from a small clay grill. A man is turning skewers of Nile perch, each piece brushed with a mixture of crushed herbs, lemon, and a drizzle of oil. The skin blisters and crackles over the coals, sending up little bursts of fragrance. When the fish is served, it comes on a round of warm bread, the flesh flaking apart at the slightest touch. The lemon makes it bright, almost singing against the deep savour of the grilled meat. Beside the fish stall is a woman selling roasted chickpeas. They're seasoned simply with salt and coriander, but the heat from the roasting makes them fragrant, almost nutty. She pours them into small palm leaf cones, and the warmth seeps through to your fingers. The crunch is satisfying, crisp on the outside, soft in the middle, with just enough salt to make you reach for more. Little farther along, the market turns sweeter. There's a stall where a young boy is spooning warm honey over clusters of puffed barley. The honey seeps into the grains, cooling and hardening just enough to hold them together in sticky golden clumps. He hands one over shyly, and it's light in the hand but rich in the mouth, the barley's toasty flavour balancing the honey's depth. The riverbank itself has become part of the market. A woman in a faded blue dress kneels by the water, rinsing small bunches of fresh herbs, mint, parsley, dill, before handing them to a man at a nearby table. He chops them quickly, tossing them into a bowl of soft white cheese and folding the mixture into thin bread. The result is fresh and cool, the herbs sharp against the mild, creamy cheese. As we eat, we find a quiet spot on the bank. The moon is reflected so clearly in the water that the fish below seem to be swimming through silver. Boats glide past in near silence, their sails ghostly in the night. A musician sits nearby with a long-necked lute, plucking notes that drift into the air like curling smoke. The melody is slow, almost hesitant, but it fits the scene, each note a pebble dropped into still water. For dessert, there's something I've never seen before, a baked custard made from milk, eggs and honey, cooked in small clay pots set right into the embers. The top is just barely browned, the edges pulling slightly from the sides of the pot. The texture is soft, almost trembling on the spoon, and the taste is pure comfort, creamy, sweet and warm, like a lullaby for the mouth. The night market begins to thin as travellers take to the road or settle by their fires. We linger a little longer, letting the last bites dissolve slowly, watching the moon inch higher in the sky. When we finally rise, the river has gone quieter, and the market's lanterns are dimming one by one. We follow the path away, the smell of grilled fish and honey still trailing faintly behind us. Now, let your mind wander too. The road away from the night market is quiet, with only the occasional glimmer of lantern light left behind. The ground beneath our feet is a mixture of fine sand and stray bits of river reed, soft enough that our steps make almost no sound at all. Above, the stars seem brighter than earlier, like the night has been polishing them while we wandered. We pass a small orchard of date palms, their fronds whispering softly as the breeze brushes through. At the orchard's edge, a single fire glows. Around it, a family tends to a large copper pot suspended over the coals. The smell is enough to draw us closer, sweet, nutty, and just a little smoky. Inside the pot, they're making a kind of halva. It's not the crumbly sesame sweet you might know, but something softer, made from ground barley and honey stirred slowly until it thickens into a smooth golden paste. The father stirs with a wooden paddle while the mother adds small handfuls of chopped walnuts, their oil rising to the surface in tiny glistening beads. They let us taste a spoonful fresh from the pot. It's warm, rich, and just a little sticky, the barley giving it an earthiness that keeps the sweetness from overwhelming. The walnuts add little bursts of crunch, and the honey lingers at the back of the throat long after the bite is gone. While we eat, one of the children offers dates fresh from the trees, They're soft, almost bursting with syrup, and so sweet that you can feel the sugar spark through your fingertips just holding them. A few have been stuffed with almond slivers, a simple touch that makes each bite feel like a little celebration. Beyond the fire, the orchard is alive with the subtle sounds of night. Small rustlings in the fronds, the quiet drop of a date hitting the soft sand below. You can almost imagine the trees themselves breathing in the moonlight. The family offers us a drink to go with the sweets, a pale, fragrant infusion made from dried chamomile and a pinch of crushed anise. It's light, almost airy, with a faint licorice note that curls at the edge of each sip. It feels like it was brewed not just to be drunk, but to coax the mind into a calmer place. We sit a while, passing dates and halva back and forth, the copper pot between us still glowing faintly from the heat of the coals. No one talks much. There's no need. The rhythm of the night and the slow spooning of halva is conversation enough. Eventually the fire is banked low, and the last of the halva is poured into shallow dishes to cool overnight. The father offers us a small wrapped portion for the road, pressing it into our hands with the same care as a treasured keepsake. As we step away from the orchard, the sweetness still clings to our mouths, and the smell of honey seems to follow us, mingling with the cool air off the river. The palms behind us sway gently, their leaves catching the moonlight like silver threads. Now, let your mind wander too. The path from the orchard bends close to the river again, where the sound of water is joined by something softer, a faint rhythmic tapping. It takes a moment to see the source. Two fishermen repairing their nets by lantern light, their hands moving with patient, practiced ease. The river glimmers beyond them, moonlight rippling like a sheet of hammered silver. They greet us with nods, but their work continues, each knot tied as carefully as if it were a bead in a necklace. Nearby, a small clay stove glows, its coals breathing faintly. The smell that drifts from it is unmistakable. Freshly grilled bread, the kind that puffs slightly as it cooks, leaving charred blisters along the surface. One of the fishermen gestures for us to sit. From a low basket, he pulls a small jar, its lid sealed with wax. When it's open, the scent rushes out, tangy, savoury and deep. It's a fish paste, made from the last season's catch, salted and aged until it's become almost creamy in texture. He spreads a thin layer over the hot bread and passes it to us. The first bite is intense, salty at the start, then mellowing into a rich, almost smoky depth. The warmth of the bread softens the flavour, and the charred spots give little bursts of bitterness that make each bite more interesting. To drink, they have a pale, slightly cloudy beer, lighter than most, brewed with emmer wheat and faintly flavoured with mint leaves. The mint isn't overpowering, it lingers like a cool shadow after each swallow. While we eat, the men talk quietly about the river's behaviour tonight. They point to the patterns in the current, reading it the way some people read the sky. To them, it's as alive as any creature, sometimes generous, sometimes moody, always needing to be understood rather than controlled. A third man approaches from the shadows carrying something wrapped in leaves. He sets it by the coals, and soon the air is filled with a sweet, nutty scent. When it's unwrapped, we see roasted tiger nuts, small, wrinkled tubers that have been cooked until they're just tender inside. They taste faintly of almonds and coconut, with a satisfying chew. The fishermen laugh when we say we've never had them before. They explain that tiger nuts have been eaten here for thousands of years, sometimes raw, sometimes soaked in water to make a sweet, milky drink. These, roasted, are a treat for long nights on the river. We linger for a while, the food warm in our stomachs, the river's voice steady and low in the background. Every so often a fish leaps, breaking the surface with a small splash, then disappears back into the silver-dark depths. Eventually the nets are coiled, the last of the bread eaten and the coals covered. One of the men hands us a small pouch of roasted tiger nuts for luck, tying it shut with a twist of reed fibre. As we walk away, the tapping of their tools fades, replaced by the gentle slap of water against the shore. The moon is drifting west now, its reflection stretching into a path that almost seems to invite us to follow. Now, let your mind wander too. The moon has dipped lower, and the air carries that quiet, expectant stillness that comes just before dawn. The horizon is still dark, but there's a faint paling at the edges, as though the sky is considering the idea of morning. The river has taken on a glassy calm broken only by the occasional ripple from a passing fish. We follow a narrow track away from the water and into a grove of sycamore fig trees. Their wide branches arch overhead, leaves whispering softly with each brush of wind. The air here is cooler, with a hint of sweetness from fruit ripening high above. Beneath one of the trees, a small fire flickers beside a stone hearth. An old woman sits cross-legged on a mat, her hands busy shaping dough. She's making small, round flatbreads, pressing them gently between her palms before laying them on the hot stones. Beside her is a clay jar of fig jam, so dark it looks almost black in the firelight. She greets us with a smile and gestures for us to sit. The bread cooks quickly, puffing slightly and taking on a faint golden hue. When one is ready, she tears it in half, spreads it generously with jam and folds it before handing it over. The first bite is a rush of contrast, the bread warm and smoky from the hearthstones, the jam thick and sweet with just a hint of tartness at the edges. It's the kind of sweetness that feels natural, like it grew out of the bread itself. Beside the hearth, a small pot simmers with a drink I've never smelled before. She ladles it into clay cups, and the steam carries scents of carob and a whisper of cinnamon. It's a thick, dark beverage, made from roasted carob pods ground into a paste and simmered with water and honey. The taste is rich and comforting, like cocoa without the bitterness, with the honey smoothing every edge. We eat and drink in easy silence, the grove around us filled with the gentle chorus of crickets. Every so often a fig drops from the branches above, landing with a soft thud in the sand. The woman doesn't rush to gather them. She knows the fruit will still be there after the bread is gone. When the last bite is finished, she offers us a handful of dried figs from a woven basket. They're wrinkled and soft, their sweetness concentrated into something almost floral. She tells us that dried figs were often carried by travellers, both for their flavour and for the energy they gave. They were as much a part of a journey as the path itself. As the fire burns lower, the eastern horizon brightens just a little more, shading from deep blue to the faintest grey. The woman tucks the last of her bread into a clay pot, covering it with a cloth. She doesn't ask where we're headed, only tells us to walk gently, so the morning arrives without hurry. We step back onto the path, the warmth of the bread and carob drink still inside us, and the sky slowly, patiently begins to open. Now, let your mind wander too. The first threads of dawn are weaving through the sky now, pale gold and soft rose spilling across the eastern horizon. The air carries that cool, clean feeling that only exists in the moments before the sun climbs fully into view. The last of the stars seem reluctant to leave, lingering faintly above as though they want to see how the day will unfold. We follow the path out of the sycamore grove and toward a cluster of low mud brick homes. The village is only just waking. Doors creak open, roosters call from somewhere behind a wall, and the faint smoke of morning fires curls upward in slow spirals. From one open doorway drifts the warm, nutty scent of baking. Inside, a man kneels beside a domed clay oven, his hands dusted with flour. He's placing small clay dishes inside, each filled with a mixture of cracked wheat, milk, and honey. They'll bake slowly, thickening into something rich and custard-like by the time the sun is well up. While we wait, he offers us something simpler. Warm bread fresh from the oven, brushed lightly with oil and sprinkled with crushed coriander seed. The bread is airy, its crust thin and crisp, and the coriander gives each bite a citrusy brightness that wakes the tongue. On a low table nearby sits a clay jug of cool water, infused with slices of cucumber and sprigs of fresh mint. The taste is clean, almost startling after the richness of the bread, and it seems to carry the freshness of the morning itself. The man tells us about his oven, how it's been patched and mended over the years, how its walls hold the memory of every loaf baked inside it. He speaks slowly, as though each word is kneaded like dough, and you can feel the quiet pride in his voice. Soon, the custards are ready. He pulls one from the oven, the top round and slightly puffed, the edges pulling gently from the sides of the dish. The first spoonful is soft and sweet, the honey sinking to the bottom so that every bite grows richer as you go. It's a breakfast that feels like it could double as a dessert, a small luxury to greet the day. Outside, the light is changing quickly now. The sun's first rays touch the tops of the palm trees, turning their fronds into gold. The air is still cool, but you can already sense the warmth gathering at the edges. As we leave, the man wraps a small loaf of coriander bread for us, tying it with a thin strip of papyrus fibre. The warmth seeps through the cloth into our hands, a small comfort to carry into the day. The village is livelier now, women fetching water from the river, children chasing each other along the narrow lanes, a pair of donkeys laden with baskets making their slow way toward the fields. The smell of baking and fresh herbs lingers in the air, mingling with the first heat of the morning sun. And so, bread in hand, we step back onto the path, ready to follow where the day decides to take us. Now, let your mind wander too. The sun is climbing steadily now, casting a golden wash across the fields. The Nile glitters in the distance, its surface rippling gently as though waking from a long dream. A soft breeze carries the scent of damp soil and young plants, an earthy perfume that speaks of the season's first growth. We follow the road toward the fields, where the farmers are already at work. Some bend low to tend to rows of onions, their green stalks sharp and bright against the dark earth. Others carry baskets of freshly cut herbs, the fragrance of dill and parsley trailing in their wake. At the edge of one field, a woman sits beneath the shade of a broad palm, her basket brimming with vegetables. She offers us a place beside her and reaches into the basket to show us her morning harvest: cucumbers, onions, and fresh green beans. From a cloth pouch, she takes out a small clay bowl filled with a dip made of crushed chickpeas, garlic, and lemon. She tears a piece of flatbread and uses it to scoop up a bit of the dip, then adds a slice of cucumber on top. The flavors are cool and bright, the garlic lingering just enough to warm the tongue. It's a simple snack, but under the palm's shade with the breeze brushing your skin, it feels like a feast. While we eat, she points out a small clay jar nestled among the vegetables. Inside is pickled turnip stained a deep pink from slices of beetroot stored alongside it. The first bite is tangy and crisp, the kind of flavour that makes your mouth water instantly. She laughs when she sees my expression and says it's the perfect way to keep the heat of the day at bay. Nearby, a young boy brings over a bundle of fresh mint tied with a strip of reed. He crushes a leaf between his fingers, releasing a burst of green fragrance. He drops a few into our cups of cool water, the flavour turning each sip into something refreshing enough to make you sigh. The work in the fields continues around us, hoes striking soil with a steady rhythm, baskets filling, voices calling softly from one row to the next. It's not hurried, but it's constant, a flow of movement that matches the river's own pace. For a small treat, the woman unwraps another bundle from her basket, boiled fava beans seasoned with cumin and a squeeze of lemon. They're soft, almost creamy inside, and their warmth is comforting even in the rising heat. She explains that this is the kind of food that carries you through the day, a slow, steady energy, not a quick rush. As the sun rises higher, the light grows sharper, bouncing off the water channels that run between the fields. The farmers pause to drink, the metal of their cups flashing briefly in the light before they return to their work. When we rise to go, the woman presses a small bundle of cucumbers into our hands. "Something cool for later," she says, her eyes crinkling with kindness. We walk on, the vegetables cool against our palms, the sound of the fields slowly fading behind us. The road ahead glints in the sunlight, curving toward the river once more. Now, let your mind wander too. The sun has claimed the sky now, high and steady, pouring light over the land until every shadow seems sharper. The heat is no longer just warmth, it's a slow, steady weight, pressing gently on your shoulders as you walk. The scent of the Nile is stronger again, mingling with the faint mineral tang that rises from sun-baked stone. We find ourselves on a small embankment where a handful of fishermen have pulled their boats ashore. The sails are furled tight, the hulls still damp from the morning's work. One of the men waves us over, his broad smile as open as the river behind him. They've just finished cooking their midday meal over a fire of driftwood. At the centre is a pan of tilapia, caught only hours ago, now simmering in a broth of garlic, leeks and coriander. The fish is tender enough to flake at the touch of a spoon, the broth rich but brightened by a squeeze of lemon just before serving. Beside it sits a basket of bread, thick, round loaves, their crusts dusted lightly with flour. The bread is torn by hand, dipped into the broth, and eaten slowly, the flavours soaking into every bite. It's a meal that doesn't demand talking. It asks for silence, for the rhythm of bite, chew, sip, breathe. A small clay jug passes between us, filled with lightly fermented barley drink. It's cool from being stored in the shade, and its gentle fizz dances on the tongue. The taste is earthy and a little sour, but refreshing against the heat. When the fish is gone, they bring out something unexpected, a dish of melon slices. The fruit is pale green, its flesh so juicy that it drips down your fingers if you're not careful. The sweetness is light and clean, the kind that makes the back of your mouth ache pleasantly. One of the younger fishermen laughs as he sees us savouring it. He says that in the hottest months, melon is as prized as any gold, because it gives both water and sweetness in the same bite. We linger a little longer, listening to the water lap softly at the boat hulls. Every so often, a breeze carries the scent of the broth's herbs from the cooling pan, mingling with the sharper, salty note of the riverbank. When it's time to go, they press a small piece of dried fish into our hands. Salty, firm, meant to last for days on the road. Is not for now, they say, but for when the path grows long between villages. The road away from the river is bright, the sunlight making the air shimmer just above the ground. The sound of the fisherman's laughter follows us for a while, until it's swallowed by the steady hum of cicadas. Now, let your mind wander too. The sun sits high and unwavering now, casting the world in a haze of heat. Every surface, stone, sand, clay, seems to hum softly, as though holding on to the morning's energy and radiating it back into the air. Even the breeze has slowed, its movement lazy and warm, like a sigh stretched out over the land. We follow the curve of the road toward a cluster of tall date palms. Their shade falls like cool water over the path, and stepping into it feels like slipping into a hidden room. The sound here is different, quieter, muted by the fronds swaying above. Beneath the palms, a small caravan is resting, camels kneel in the sand, their shadows long and angled. The traders have laid woven mats on the ground, and at the centre, a large brass tray gleams in the dappled light. On it are small dishes, olives glistening with oil, roasted barley grains, wedges of soft goat cheese, and handfuls of fresh herbs. The olives are briny and rich, their saltiness lingering on the tongue, the oil smooth and faintly peppery. The barley is crunchy at first, then chewy, with a toasty aroma that speaks of the hearth. The cheese is mild, creamy and slightly tangy, the perfect counterpoint to the salt and grain. One of the traders passes around a jug of tamarind drink, dark, almost reddish-brown, with a sharp tang that cools the mouth instantly. It's sweet and sour at once, each sip waking you up from the heat's slow pull. From a small clay pot comes another treat, roasted chickpeas still warm, seasoned with cumin and a hint of dried mint. They crunch under your teeth, releasing a burst of earthy flavour that lingers pleasantly. The traders speak in low voices, some discussing the next leg of their journey, others telling small jokes that make them smile without breaking the calm. One pulls out a small pouch of dried apricots, their orange flesh deepened to amber by the sun. They're soft and sticky, with a concentrated sweetness that feels like eating a piece of late summer. A young boy pours water from a tall clay jar into wide cups, the liquid cool from being stored in the shade. He drops in crushed mint leaves, the green fragrance rising with the steam of the warm day. The first sip is so refreshing it makes you close your eyes for a moment. We sit together in the dappled light, the heat kept at bay by the palm's steady shade. The camels shift occasionally, their bells giving a soft, almost musical jingle. Somewhere beyond the grove, the faint hum of cicadas continues, steady and hypnotic. When it's time for the caravan to move on, they wrap a small bundle of roasted barley for us. To keep the road short, they say, meaning the way food can make distance feel less heavy. As they mount their camels and drift away into the shimmering horizon, we remain a moment longer in the palm shadow, the taste of tamarind and mint still cooling our mouths. The sun presses on, but in the shade it feels more like a soft weight than a burden. Now, let your mind wander to... The caravan's trail fades into the heat shimmer, and we step back onto the open road. The air smells faintly of dry grass and warm earth, and each step kicks up a fine dust that glows golden in the sunlight before settling again. The cicadas keep their steady song, a sound that seems to fill the space between heartbeats. Ahead, the land dips toward a shallow canal branching off from the Nile. Its banks are lined with reeds, and the water moves lazily, reflecting the pale blue of the afternoon sky. A small group of workers rests under a woven awning near the water's edge, their tools stacked neatly beside them. They wave us over, offering a seat on the low bench they've built from bundled reeds. A clay pot sits in the centre, covered with a woven lid to keep the flies away. When they lift it, the smell of fresh bread escapes, thick rounds made from emmer wheat, still warm from the morning bake. Beside the bread is a bowl of mashed fava beans seasoned with garlic, lemon, and a scattering of chopped parsley. The beans are creamy with a deep, earthy flavour brightened by the citrus. They scoop it onto the bread, folding it into small parcels before passing it around. To drink, they have cool water stored in porous clay jars that sweat gently in the heat, keeping the contents chilled. Floating inside are slices of sweet melon, their pale flesh infusing the water with a faint perfume. The first sip is both cooling and subtly sweet, like tasting a memory of morning. For a small treat, one of the workers produces a basket of sesame biscuits, thin, crisp, and fragrant. They break easily between the fingers, leaving behind a faint sheen of oil and seeds. The taste is nutty, with a whisper of honey that appears only after the second bite. The air under the awning is still warm, but the shade makes it bearable. We sit quietly, listening to the soft splash of water against the canal's edge and the occasional rustle of reeds as the breeze stirs. Now and then, a dragonfly darts past, its wings flashing in the sunlight. When the meal is done, the workers lean back against the reed wall, eyes half closed, speaking in slow, low voices. One plucks at a stringed instrument, the notes carrying lazily across the water. Before we leave, they wrap a small bundle of sesame biscuits for us, tucking them into cloth with a nod. The taste of them lingers on the tongue as we step back into the open sunlight, the shimmer of the canal following us like a reflection. The road ahead bends gently toward the horizon, and somewhere far off, the faint outline of another cluster of palm trees waits. Now, let your mind wander too. The light has taken on that deep honeyed tone that makes everything it touches seem softer. Walls, water, even the air itself. We follow the road as it curves around a low hill, the horizon stretching wide and warm before us. Somewhere ahead, faint smoke curls upward, and the gentle scent of roasting grain reaches us before we see its source. At the base of the hill, we find a small open-air mill. A pair of donkeys turn the great stone wheels, their slow, steady pace grinding wheat into a fine, pale flour. Beside them, a woman kneels over a shallow clay pan, toasting barley in small batches. The sound is faint but constant, tiny pops and crackles as the grains darken. She greets us with a nod and gestures toward a shaded corner where a low table is set. On the table are bowls of the freshly toasted barley mixed with honey and pressed into small, dense cakes. They're warm from the sun, their surfaces slightly glossy. The first bite is chewy, nutty, with a sweetness that builds slowly. It's the kind of food that feels both like a snack and like it could keep you walking for hours. Next to the cakes is a clay jug of lightly fermented date drink. It's cool, tangy, and faintly sweet, with the fruit's deep flavour softened by time. The drink leaves a gentle warmth in the chest without the heaviness of stronger brews. While we eat, the miller's son brings over another treat. Thin wafers made from wheat flour and brushed with pomegranate syrup. They're crisp enough to break with a soft snap, the tart sweet syrup drying into a glossy sheen that catches the late light. The flavour is bright and sharp at first, then fades into the nutty taste of the wafer. From where we sit, we can see the fields laid out below, the irrigation channels catching the sunset in narrow ribbons of gold. The air is filled with the low hum of crickets and the occasional bray of the donkeys as they pause in their circuit. One of the mill workers joins us with a small bowl of dried dates, some plain, others split and filled with chopped walnuts. The filled ones are rich and soft, the nuts breaking up the sweetness with a satisfying crunch. He says travellers often take them for long trips, just as we've seen in so many hands along the road. The shadows stretch longer now, reaching across the hill toward the first glimmer of evening. A cooler breeze slips in, carrying with it the faint scent of the river again. We finish the last of the barley cakes, brushing crumbs from our palms as the donkeys slow their steady turning. Before we leave, the miller presses 2 of the cakes into a strip of cloth, tying it neatly. For the cool hours, she says, meaning the walk that will carry us into night. We step back onto the road, the last warmth of the sun on our backs, and the day tilts gently toward evening. Now, let your mind wander too. The sun rests low on the horizon now, turning the sky into a deep wash of amber and rose. Shadows stretch like long ribbons across the ground, and the air has taken on that first cool breath of evening. Each step feels lighter in the fading heat, as though the day is finally loosening its hold. We follow the curve of the road until the first lamps appear ahead, small points of firelight bobbing in the breeze. They mark the entrance to a small riverside hamlet, where the evening meal is already underway. From the shore, the smell of wood smoke mingles with the sharp, inviting scent of grilled onions. Near the water, a family has set up a low table beside a crackling fire. Over the flames, a clay pot bubbles with a stew of lentils, leeks, and strips of dried fish. The broth is fragrant with cumin and coriander, its surface shimmering faintly in the firelight. When ladled into bowls, the steam rises in slow, curling ribbons, carrying the scent of the spices into the night air. The stew is eaten with soft flatbreads, folded and torn to scoop up both broth and vegetables. The bread soaks in the flavours, the lentils giving each bite a rich earthy weight. The dried fish softens in the heat, adding a salty depth that lingers at the edges of the tongue. Beside the fire, a young girl tends to a tray of small eggplants roasting in the embers. Their skins blacken and blister, and when peeled away, the flesh inside is tender and smoky. Mashed with garlic and sesame paste, it becomes a smooth, rich dip, warm from the fire and subtly nutty from the seeds. To drink, they offer a cool infusion of hibiscus petals, its deep red colour glowing in the lamplight. The flavour is tart and floral, cutting cleanly through the heaviness of the stew, leaving the mouth refreshed and ready for another bite. For something sweet, there's a bowl of dates split and stuffed with bits of fresh cheese. The cheese is mild and creamy, the dates sticky and rich, the combination melting together into something both indulgent and soothing. The night settles more fully as we eat. The fire crackles softly, and the sound of water laps against the shore just beyond. Overhead, the first stars appear, faint at first, then sharper as the sky deepens. When the bowls are empty, the family doesn't rush to clear them. They lean back, talking in low voices, their words mixing with the quiet music of the river. The air smells of smoke, bread, and the faint sweetness of the dates, a combination that feels as old as the land itself. Before we leave, the father hands us a folded piece of bread wrapped around a small portion of the smoky eggplant dip. For the path, he says with a smile, and the firelight dances in his eyes. We step back into the cool air, the glow of the lamps fading behind us as we follow the riverbank deeper into night. Now, let your mind wander too. The sky has turned fully to velvet now, the stars pricked bright and sharp above. The river is a ribbon of shadow, its surface broken only by the faint gleam of starlight and the slow, gentle drift of a passing boat. The air is cool enough to make you draw your shawl closer, carrying the scent of water, smoke, and faintly, jasmine. We follow the smell until we find its source. A small garden tucked between 2 houses, its entrance lit by a single oil lamp hanging from a carved wooden post. Inside, a man sits beside a brazier, roasting nuts over low coals. The shells crack softly as he stirs them with a wooden spoon, the scent of their oil rising in warm waves. He gestures for us to join him, and from a clay bowl he offers the first handful. They're almonds lightly dusted with salt and coriander. The heat brings out their sweetness, the spice lingering just long enough to make you reach for another. Beside him on a low table sits a pot of sweet milk steeped with cardamom. He pours it into small cups, the steam curling upward into the cool night air. The drink is rich and soothing, the cardamom warm and floral, wrapping the tongue in comfort. On another tray rests a pile of small honey cakes, each no larger than a thumbprint, made from semolina and brushed with syrup. They're soft at the centre, with just the faintest crust on the outside. The first bite releases a burst of sweetness, but it's the buttery grain that lingers, making them feel as much like bread as dessert. We eat slowly, the lamplight catching on the gloss of the syrup, the garden around us alive with quiet sounds, the rustle of leaves, the soft buzz of night insects, the occasional splash from the river beyond the wall. The man speaks sparingly, sharing only that his father taught him to roast nuts, so that they taste like the day they were picked, but warmer. He places a small pouch of them beside us without comment, returning to stir the brazier with the same steady rhythm as before. Somewhere above, a shooting star scratches a brief line of light across the sky. The moment passes quickly, but the quiet it leaves behind feels even deeper than before. When we stand to go, the man nods once, the glow of the brazier reflecting in his eyes. The garden gate closes softly behind us, and the night folds in around our steps once more. Now, let your mind wander too. The path curves away from the garden, leading us through a stretch of quiet streets. Most of the homes are dark now, their doorways shadowed, their courtyards still. Only the occasional flicker of a lamp hints that someone inside is still awake. We follow the faint sound of a flute, its melody soft and unhurried, like a lullaby carried on the breeze. It leads us to a small courtyard where a family sits in a loose circle around a low fire. The fire is modest, but it glows steadily, lighting their faces in amber tones. A shallow clay dish rests on the embers, holding a mixture of wheat porridge and dates, cooked until thick and glossy. The smell is deep and sweet, with the faintest edge of smoke from the fire beneath. They serve it in small bowls, and the texture is smooth but hearty, each spoonful carrying the rich sweetness of the dates and the grain's earthy warmth. Beside it, on a woven tray, are figs stuffed with crushed sesame seeds and rolled in a thin layer of honey. The honey clings to the fingers, and the sesame gives each bite a gentle crunch. It's the kind of sweetness that sits low and steady in the stomach, not sharp or fleeting. They pour a dark drink from a narrow-necked jug, fermented barley, light but rich, with a faint herbal note from mint leaves steeped during brewing. It's cool from the night air, its tang waking the mouth after the porridge's gentle sweetness. The flute player sits just outside the firelight, his notes rising and falling in easy arcs. He plays without looking at his hands, the music threading through the conversation like a second voice. The family doesn't speak much at first, content to pass bowls and refill cups. When they do speak, it's in the low, measured tones of people winding down from the day. A few of the younger ones lean against each other, eyes half-lidded, their bodies swaying slightly in time with the music. For a final taste, the oldest woman brings out a clay jar of candied lemon peel. The pieces are thin, almost translucent, their edges curled from drying. They're both sweet and sharp, the kind of flavour that wakes you just enough to keep you from drifting completely into sleep. When the fire burns low, the bowls are stacked and the tray of figs covered. The flute's last notes hang briefly in the air before fading into the night. We leave the courtyard quietly, the warmth of the fire still in our clothes, the taste of lemon peel lingering faintly at the edges of our tongue. Above, the sky has begun to pale just slightly, a promise that morning isn't far. Now, let your mind wander too. The stars are still out, but the horizon wears a thin silver thread. The air has shifted, cooler now, but with the faintest hint of warmth waiting just beyond the edge of night. The road is quiet except for the soft crunch of our steps and the distant murmur of the Nile. We follow the pale glow eastward until we reach a riverside clearing. Here, a small group is gathered around a low fire, their cloaks drawn close against the chill. The flames throw short, sharp shadows, and the smell of boiling grain drifts up into the open air. A clay pot rests among the embers, filled with barley simmering in goat's milk. The milk has thickened in the slow heat, and the barley has swollen until it's tender but still gives a gentle bite. Honey is stirred in slowly, the colour deepening to a warm gold. They serve it in wide bowls, steam rising into the cool pre-dawn air. The porridge is comforting, rich, sweet and grounding after the long hours of night. Each spoonful seems to gather the warmth of the fire and press it gently into your chest. Alongside the bowls, they pass around fresh bread rolls, small and round, their crusts brushed with oil. The rolls are split open and filled with soft cheese mixed with chopped dill, the herb's brightness lifting the richness of the milk and grain. A jug of warm water infused with lemon and mint makes its way around the circle. The citrus sharpens the senses just enough to notice the gradual change in light, the sky lightening from deep indigo to pale lavender. Someone brings out a tray of dried figs and pomegranate seeds, scattering them into bowls for sharing. The figs are chewy and dense, their sweetness slow and deep. The pomegranate seeds are bright bursts of tartness, little jewels in the half-light. As we eat, conversation stays soft, as though no one wants to speak too loudly and disturb the delicate balance between night and day. The fire pops now and then, sending tiny sparks upward toward the fading stars. Then the first sliver of sun breaks the horizon. Its light spills over the river, turning the water into a molten path stretching out into the distance. The cool air softens, and the scent of the river seems to deepen, mingling with the warmth of the fire and the faint perfume of the herbs. When the bowls are empty, no one rushes to leave. We sit a little longer, watching the sun rise higher, the gold deepening, the shadows slipping away. Finally, they hand us a small bundle, a roll of bread, a wedge of cheese, and a handful of pomegranate seeds wrapped in cloth. For the day ahead, they say, and the words feel like both a farewell and a blessing. We step onto the road once more, the river at our side, the sun before us, and the long memory of the night behind us. May these memories guide you into peaceful dreams, wherever and whenever you need them. If you drifted off somewhere along the way, you can tell me below. I'll be glad to know the river carried you gently. Sweet dreams, my friend.